Okay.
And what that does is it allows your vault, and it again doesn't matter whether it's in the cloud or on premise, it's going to just look like another location to your system. So
Okay.
it's a virtual drive. You can file save as onto here from any application. You can drag and drop files onto here. You can pretty much do anything you want from anywhere because this is just going to appear in your Explorer bar. And then a
Okay.
double clicking on this would act the same as double clicking on the desktop icon here for your Windows client, for your desktop client. Now I have
Okay.
lots of different types of vaults on here. And so I'm going to double click here, but you can see I have lots of different vaults. We're going to work in this vault. And so this is what you would see when you double click on your icon. It's going to open up right to the user interface. So
Okay.
what I want to do is just kind of give you a generic tour. Okay. Now this isn't built for EZStorage, so it's not going to have your documents and your properties and your information in it. This is just a generic demo, but you'll see how this can apply to you as we go through this. All right, so there's 5 sections to the screen. The right side we call the preview pane. You can see here on what we call the home screen that there's always links to help and training and videos and user guides and all kinds of things. And
Okay.
then at the top of this screen on the right side, you'll see where we've got some icons where you can create new content, new things, whatever the things are that you want to create. Document, again, is the same as a new customer record or a workflow assignment, or you can see I did a demo last week for an agency up there in your area that wanted to investigate ethics cases. They were an association, I think it was the American Speech and Hearing Association or something like that. And so no problem. An ethics case to us is the same as a document, same as a customer, same as anything else. It just has metadata to describe it, and
Okay.
including adding documents from a scanner if you have or any of your users have a scanner directly attached to their workstation. You can simply, like a little $100 HP or whatever, you can scan documents directly into M files. And the term we use for the repository is called the vault. So you're going to hear me talk about the vault all day long. And so you can scan documents directly into here. The majority of our documents typically are scanned into network folders from network scanners, and we will pick those documents up automatically and bring them in, turn them into fully text searchable PDFs, and kick off a workflow if it's appropriate for like your invoices and those kinds of things. So this is customizable for you. This whole right side of the screen, we can really put kind of anything that you want out here. And you can see these tabs for metadata and preview. So as we're moving around, this is all going to change, and you'll see documents and you'll see metadata and all kinds of stuff over here on this right side of the screen. The left side of the screen we call the task area. You can see it's got a lot of shortcuts to get different places within M files, like the home
Okay.
screen or workflow assignments, things that you've checked out, favorites, so on and so forth. And then you can customize it even further by creating shortcuts into the data that's in the vault that you've created some of these views for that we're going to show you here in a second. And then you've got the same capabilities up here at the top to create all of the same objects. Again, this is going to be permissions driven based on your users, on who has permissions to create what in the system. And then here's the ability to create these new views that we're going to talk about here in a second as well. So we are going to understand all this. It's in that integration with Windows, like I talked about, Robert. It's the same commands. Left click highlights something, right click opens up a menu, double click will open up your document, and drag and drop. So it's just like working in any Windows application, and that's why we get such high marks for ease of use, because of
Okay.
the easy. It's just any other Windows application. So that's section 2 of the screen. Section 3, you can see here, is user specific. So this is now going to be for each one of your people, right? So they can now see when they open up M files if they have any workflow assignments, if they have anything checked out that they haven't checked in. So let's talk for a second here about the database. So M files comes with its own database. On premise, it's called Firebird Embedded. In the Cloud Vault, it's a SQL, Azure SQL database. But in any case, we only store things once, period. And from that moment on, we're only storing changes, whether it's a change to the content, if it's an editable file, change to the metadata, a workflow state change, adding annotations, whatever it might be, all of those activities will create a new version. And we're always going to track and manage all of the versions of everything that lives in the vault, not just documents, but records. So if you have a customer record and somebody changes their phone number and saves it, that's version 2. They move to a different building, you put in a new address, you save that, that's version 3. There's not a document involved with that, it's just simply a record. So you'll see that as we move around the system. But the database, like I said, for us to manage versions and control the audit trails and tracking and all of these kinds of things, for editable documents, we're going to ask if you want to open it, whether you want to check it out or not. Now, if you check it out, no one else will be able to edit it, although they could see it, and they could ask you to check it back in, and if they needed it. So we're going to always control who is editing a document. We're only going to allow one person to make changes to it at a time. You know, on your Words and your Excels and PowerPoints and Visios, whatever type of files that, you know, can be changed. PDFs, you know, by definition, typically can't be changed, but we could set this up to be checked out as well. If, for example, you wanted to have users accessing your vault from a web browser and you wanted to add annotations on top of a PDF, which we can do here in the client. So I'll just click on this invoice, and now you can see we have all of the metadata over here, and by clicking the preview tab, I can now see what that invoice looks like, exactly what that document looks like. But when I do click on that preview tab, notice that there's a change over here that says new annotations. And by clicking that new annotation, it opens up this menu at the top. And now I don't know, Robert, if this is a useful thing for you. So if it's not, I can stop and we can go on to something else. But in any case, if you wanted to do that from a browser, you don't have this new annotations menu. So you would have to open it up and do those comments on top of it in Adobe. And then we can allow that to be checked out and checked in so that those comments are saved and it's versioned up the same way. Just like you see here in the metadata, you know, this document is on version 7, I think it was. And so you notice that here's the history, and clicking the history shows all of the changes that have been made and who made them. It's always going to show right here in this gray box who made this change and when they made it. And so if I clicked on any one of these, then you can see that in the metadata on 2/17, that's when demo user made this change, and that's me, that's my login, as you can see here. That's when I made this change to that document. And even in the preview pane, I can always see, or even in the history, I'm sorry, you can always see a preview of what the document actually looks like. And even though this is a PDF, notice that I could roll back even a PDF to a prior version, which would create version 8, which in this case, if I did it now, would create a copy of whatever version 4 is. And that's true for a Word file, an Excel, a PowerPoint. It's always going to keep all of that history and allow you to do whatever you want to do with it, but it's always going to manage the complete audit trail and tracking for everything that's in the vault. Questions about anything so far?
No, it makes sense so far.
Okay, perfect. So we've got assigned to me, checked out to me because I haven't checked it back in, and then you can see here recently accessed by me. So whatever I've accessed in the last 30 days or so is going to show up on this list, and you can see there's all kinds of things on here, pictures, Word files, anything that, you know, there's a customer record, anything that Windows can manage, M-Files can manage. Any Windows file type, and there's, you know, several hundred file types, we can also manage them here in M-Files. So if you're coming in to find something that you looked at yesterday or last week, well, you can just scroll down here and you don't have to really do any other searching to find it. But in most cases, you're going to have multiple ways that you can get to your data. And that's what we call these dynamic views. So there are system views that are some of the same things you see here on the task area, favorites, recently accessed by me. And plus we have the ability to let you work offline, meaning you're on an airplane, no internet connection to your vault, obviously, but you have some contracts or some documents that you want to work on, you can simply mark them for offline use. You can mark any one of these views or any individual document just by right-clicking on it. And now I get this menu where I can do all kinds of things, including marking it for offline availability. And so
So if
now,
you marked a view for offline availability, anything new that went into that view would automatically be downloaded for you for offline use?
absolutely, because the views are dynamic. So everything that's in that view, the minute you disconnect and go offline, is going to be available to you. And so I've done that with this favorites view. So if I double click here, you can see there's 3, 6, like 12 things in this favorites view. And I go back to the home screen and go to that favorites view again and right click on it, you can see that I could mark that whole view available for offline use, which I've already done. So I don't need to do it again. But now if we aren't connected to the internet, so I'm just going to simulate that, because mFiles always knows if you lose your connection, a little box is going to pop up down here at the bottom and tell you you're not connected. And notice it just went through a little box there that was looking at your cache. So all of these documents are now cached. And there's my offline, and there's my favorites, and there's those documents, and it behaves exactly the same as if you were connected. You can see the metadata, you can see the preview, and you can check it out just like anything else. I double click here, check it out. Now it gives me an extra box that reminds me I'm working in offline mode. And so if I make a change to this, so let's just go back and look at the metadata. So this is version 5 that I took from the vault. So that's what was there when I left. When I come back, no matter what I do with it, if version 5 isn't sitting there, it's going to give me a conflict. So meaning somebody else changed it, right? While I had it offline. So it's going to give me a conflict message and allow me to rectify the conflict in whatever way I want. Throw out my changes, keep my changes, and create a different version. So let's say I checked it out and I created version 6. When I come back in, somebody already created version 6. Well, now it's going to tell me there's 2 version 6s. What do you want to do? And I could create mine as a version 7, or I have all the choices available to me. I can compare those versions together and see what's different between them and determine what I want to do to move forward.
Okay, quick question for you. When it comes to versions, is there any view or interface where you can look at versions 5 and 6 and it'll show you the differences between them, like what changed between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. So like this document here, let's see how many versions there are. So there's 6 versions here, right, of this document.
Yep.
So I'm just gonna open it up. And this is that other piece that we talked about that's different with mFiles. Remember I talked about Windows integration, but now we are also integrated with Office. So there's an mFiles tab up here in PowerPoint, Word, Excel, and Outlook. That's an automatic thing that happens. You never even know it. You never see it. There's no boxes or questions. When the software is installed, the client software is installed for you, this will automatically show up. And so now here I am in Microsoft Word, and if I wanted to compare this version to some other version, I can simply click compare and then go pick a version that takes me right into mFiles, into the history, say okay, and now it comes back, and now there's a little bit of thinking going on here now because it's going through both of those documents, comparing everything together, and so it takes a couple seconds longer, but then it's going to give you the complete comparison between those 2 versions, whatever that might be. And so now you can see between those 2 versions, what has changed, and the version that you're currently working with and the version that you chose, and you can now modify, track, merge, accept, reject, use all the Microsoft tools at your disposal to create yet another version that you want to save between those 2 things. And this could be a 20-page contract. This is just a simple 1-page fake Latin document, but it can be as complex as you want it to be. And then you can close the comparison. And so now we still have this document open, checked out. I could make changes to it now and simply just close it, which now asks me if I want to check it back in. And if I say yes, now we've checked this document back in. We didn't do anything to it, so that's why it remains at version 6. So does that answer that question?
Yeah, does that compare? What about if you wanted to see what changed in the metadata between versions?
Yeah, so in the metadata, you just open the history and you're just going to have to look at the metadata card here. And so, here's all the metadata for this version, and here's all the metadata for this version. I don't think there's any way to do a comparison side by side of the two metadata cards for two different versions of this document.
Okay, and is that compare view that you used in Word, is that available for other document types? Like, I imagine it's available for, like, I know Word has built-in reviewing tools. What about like PDFs or PowerPoints or Excel documents? Does it have the same things?
It does. If that Office product, offers that feature, then we can take advantage of it.
Okay.
So, because again, we're just tightly integrated with, those Office products. And so that MFiles tab will be up there, and you can do other things. I don't know if you noticed, you can add properties, you can insert properties into the document, because one of the things that we can do obviously is work from templates. So you can make anything into a template, and the only thing that makes a document a template is a property that says this is a template. So this view, right, this templates view, if we go back one screen and we do a right click on this view and go to the how it's built or the properties of this view, all we're doing is looking at everything in the vault where that property is yes. So we're just filtering everything out, and that's really that's how views work. And so we're going to talk some more about these views as we go through this, but so you can create forms for some of your documents that you have people fill out, and a form doesn't have to actually be a document even, right? So you can have a form be nothing more than a metadata card. So you could have a tablet sitting at in your storage retail shops, at the counters there where people are filling out documents, simply by getting a screen. So if I go into this customer's view, for example, and look at a customer record, so this is nothing more than data, right? This is just a metadata card. And so we have customers that use this type of capability for doing time slips, for example. For lawyers, use MFiles, and they create an object called a time card that there is no document, and it's just got the right properties on it for them to track the hours for a particular case, which would be one of the properties. Who the lawyer is going to be the user of MFiles. And then we have workflows and processes that will add these time slips together for certain periods of time so that they can then do billing. So you can have electronic forms, built into the product, or you can have forms from templates that when you complete the properties of that template, it actually puts that information onto the body of the document, where you've got it laid out. So it's a pretty straightforward and very simple process. So these views, like I said, can be anything you want. So like a documents view here, you can see we've got all kinds of different sorting methods and ways to go through it. We could look at all the documents by class, or we can look at them by customer and the type of document they have, by customer project and class. So again, these are just all examples of all the different ways that you could sort through your information. And if you wanted to, get through a lot of data and have it be quick, for example, we went from, and you can move up around here on the URL bar as well. So I can go here, I could go into documents, I could go into group and class and say human resources documents, job applications, and you notice that it's following me up here, all of these views. And so I could move back by clicking here, and then I could go somewhere else if I wanted to. And so if I went into a customer and looked at a project and looked at all of their contracts or agreements, but I wanted to have a shortcut for that, right click, add shortcut to task area, and there it is. So that means from the home screen, with one click, it'll take me right into that, and it circumvents all of those other clicks. So I can make myself, and you can see I've done this and renamed it, because I can just right click on it and rename it something short, so I have more space over here. So there's really no limit to what you can do, and I could remove this, just as easily from there. So, moving around MFiles is extremely easy, and the power of these views gives you you can see that there's common views. So those are going to be, again, permissions driven, but they're more generic. Your admin will create these views, and again, it's simply by creating a new view over here. where you define the name and define the filter. You can pick different sorting levels. So, and every user will be able to create their own views. So for example, this proposal's expiring view, if I right click on it and go to properties, you can see I just named it, proposal's expiring. And I said, I'm looking for, of all the objects in this vault, documents, and the type of document I want is a proposal, so the class, and then the next condition says, well, I want this, the days to this date, this effective through date, to be less than 30 days from today. So literally took me 15 seconds to create this view. I didn't sort it in any way, didn't do anything. And so now any document that's in the vault that meets that criteria is going to show up on this view. And so basically I've created a report, right, that shows me all the proposals where this date meets that criteria, or it's passed in this case, because I didn't filter out, things that are negative, because I need to know, in this particular case, I need to know that as well. And like you asked this question about the views, will they change? Yes, if somebody down the hall puts a document into the vault that has a effective through date that's less than 30 days from today, it'll show up in this view. If one of these documents changes, this document here, if we now say that this effective date is June 2017, the 29th, and we save that, well, it's gone. It's gone out of this view. So anything that changes in the vault will automatically change any view where that document shows up. Now these documents will show up in lots of different places, right? Because it has a lot of different metadata relationships. There's a customer, there's a project, it's got this date, it's got a created date, it's a proposal. So this number, proposal 7727, and you can see that number is an automatic property. So it's going to get increased by 1, in this case, every time somebody creates a new proposal. The name also is an automatic property that you can see is a combination of the date of the proposal number and the customer along with the class. So it's concatenating those 3 things together. So that's why all the proposals, the nomenclature looks the same. So you set the rules. And so we can build all of this structure. It's all just configuring, Robert. There's no programming at all to do these things and make this vault look exactly the way that you want it to look. And then this information that you have on the screen here, you could export it into a CSV file simply by just right-clicking. You only want the data, not the files. There's your vault. See, that's where your vault would show up. I'll just throw it on my desktop, and I'm going to call it Robert, and just click Save. And so you can see that it did that. And so now on my desktop, there's my Excel spreadsheet with all of that data. And I could then import it somewhere. I could do graphs, charts, can do anything that I want to do with it. So you have full control over everything, all of your data, all of your content within M-Files. And so these views, okay. Question?
Actually, if you don't mind, because of the number of document management systems I've seen, I'd like to jump around a bit to
sure.
To some of the sections that usually change between systems.
What would you like to see?
Could you show me searching for a document and then narrowing down the search to something more specific? So like search for something generic, okay.
All right.
And then once you get a list of like 50, narrow it somehow.
Okay. So let me,
different systems do it differently.
You're playing right into my strengths, Robert. I appreciate that. So here's the search engine. And the search engine with M-Files is better than Google, because with Google, you can't tell it you only want to search in, this part of the internet, or you want to filter out these things and so on and so forth. So initially, you're going to be able to set the parameters of your search, whether you want to search in metadata, file contents, or both. You can just leave it at broad, or you can search in any specific object or things that you modified or accessed within a certain period of time. So you get to define your search parameters up front, including the same information that you have when you do those views. And I'll hit this in a second, but let's do what you wanted to do first. But you also have things like all words, any word, Boolean, wild cards, strings, quotes. You have all kinds of capabilities. But I want to answer your question. So I'm going to type proposal. And it remembers, as you can see, things that I've typed in the past. So now here is a whole list of proposals. And then in the latest version of M-Files that just came out, anytime you go into a search like this, or anytime you go into one of these views, right? So if I go into a customer's view, notice this box here.
Okay.
So I could narrow it down by searching only within this view. So I can see it's not going to search anywhere else. It's only going to search within this particular view to give me things that I want. So in like that proposals expiring view, for example, that we looked at, I could search within this view and just type in, I don't know, a word like Reese and search it. And now it returned only 2 proposals. Now, how do you know that it searched only within that view? Well, let's uncheck the box and let's search for Reese again. Look at all the stuff that's in the vault under Reese. There's a guy, there's a customer. It must be on the metadata card or somewhere on this. You can see it highlights in yellow, no matter where it finds it, whether it's on the contents. Of course, there is no view for a project, but if we're looking at a document, and all of our documents, all of our PDFs are always going to be fully text searchable documents. So the word Reese is not on that document, but you can see it's in the name and it's showing up here on the metadata card.
Okay.
So that answers one of your questions on views. But now let's go back to our search here. So you can search within a view, but now I've got all of these proposals, right? Like you said, there's probably 50 or more on the screen. It says here 50 plus. Well, I want to search within this search. I'll just come up here and add that same term. And now you can see within that view, it brought me all kinds of other things into the vault that were on this screen, because you can see we first searched for proposal, then we added Reese. So here, there's Reese. Found it there, found it the same place here, it found it there, and that there's other things in the vault that we have that have Reese associated with it. So clearly it only searched, within that search term that we had already entered. So
All
now,
right. And once you create a complex search, like let's say the original result wasn't 50, it was like 2,000.
right?
And it took me, a couple minutes. I had to narrow it down to this word, and then I had to make it from this date back, yada, yada, yada. Is there a way after you create that complex search that you can convert that search result into a view that would just basically continuously update?
Absolutely. So and you're, again, thank you so much. You're playing right into my strengths. So let's pretend, for example, that you're the CFO, you're the VP, you're the president of the company, and you come into your office and you tell your accountant, I need all the invoices for Duke Energy for the third quarter of 2012 that were over $500. Now that's a pretty complex search product. In your current system, I don't know how you store your documents today. I'm assuming you have network folders and maybe some file cabinets. I would speculate.
Yeah, it's just shares.
Yeah. So how long would it take, you think, somebody to find exactly that specific information in your system today? Probably a couple of hours, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it would probably be a lot of manual hunting for a lot of the information.
It would be. So here I can find those invoices in about 30 seconds, because I'm just going to simply add that conditions. The document I want, which is class, I'm going to type a P over here, and so it goes to the P's, is invoice. And then here, the vendor I want, see I hit the V and vendor showed up. Let me just select that vendor. And so then the vendor I want is D, Duke Energy. And then just like when we created that view a second ago, I would filter out all of those by saying I'm only looking at documents, and then I would add a date condition and a dollar amount condition and only return exactly those invoices that meet that criteria. And to answer your question, once I have that search on the screen in the current version of the product, there is a button that says save this as a search, save this as a view. So you can save that then as a view and it will show up, on the home screen as one of your views.
Okay.
And so you can really do anything that you want within the product. Searching is so easy. It's very fast. You can create your own views into the product. You can access the product from not only this desktop client, but from a browser client and the mobile client. And the mobile client with M-Files, I can promise you, is significantly farther advanced than any other product that you're looking at. So
Okay.
what would you guys use? Apple, iOS, Android,
We're
Windows?
we're a large percentage Apple, but we have a couple Androids up there.
Okay, so they just download the app from the App Store for their device, right? And so notice here I've got a view, and here's my phone. This is my iPhone 6. And so this is the way that mobile app looks on the phone. And you can
Okay.
see you've got assignments. Notice there's a number up here, recently accessed. I can search. I can look at views. I could go offline, and I could look at my favorites. All the major key things that you can do from the client. And you can see that this is an actual live vault, right? So if I go, I'm going to leave this client open, and I'm going to open another one to go into that cloud vault. So this is an actual live M-Files cloud vault that we use when we're doing demos in front of people typically, and I can show them how, invoices process to the phone and you manage it and it comes back to the vault, and I can save a document from the phone and it shows up here in the vault. But you can see here's views, contracts, maintenance tasks, so on and so forth. Well, if we go back to the mobile app and I hit the views button on the phone, it looks like this. Same thing, contracts, maintenance tasks, documents, customers, projects, advanced simple views. So you can see that layout is exactly the same as this vault. And
Okay.
you can search, you can do anything that you want to do. Now, this is a live vault, and so you can see that since I took my picture, somebody's done some demos, and so the number has gone down to 5 from 8 when I took my picture. And when did I take my picture and put this in? This will tell me. January 19th. It's when I created this picture. And so the view, all I'm doing is looking for other marketing material class documents with the keyword mobile. And so then if you had this workflow and you hit that assigned key, right? If you hit the assign key up there, then it would take you to your list of assignments. And so that was current at that time. There's the 8. So if you tap this top one, then it takes you to the properties of that document. And so now you could view it by tapping here and it would open on your phone. You could see everything related to it. You can tap workflow. And if you tap workflow, then it takes you to here, where you now have the ability to move it into or out of any state that you have permissions to do so, including the ability to add a comment, including for if you wanted to add an extra level of security with our e-signature capabilities, it could require a username and password. So that if somebody picked up your phone and opened the M-Files app and saw a workflow assignment to approve their salary raise, they couldn't do it unless they knew your username and password. So we have that e-signature module that can be added on as well. So adding a new document from your phone, if you go back to the home screen here one time, see this plus sign here?
Mm-hmm.
You simply hit that plus sign, and then this pops up. Where do you want to go get this document from? Is it stored already on your phone somewhere, or do you want to take a picture? And when you take a picture, which I've already done twice today to save receipts in, because I went to a customer meeting, took somebody to lunch before we had our demo. I saved a receipt right into our corporate vault, and I actually never take them with me out of the restaurant because I only fill out one copy, take a picture of that one, and then I leave the other one there with some scribbling on it so the waitress couldn't fill in an extra $20 a tip or something. And we save all of our documents, all of our receipts in the vault through our mobile app. I access this mobile app when I'm sitting at my desk sometimes. Like right now, if we were on this demo and I forgot Courtney's name or your name or the easy whatever names, I could simply go in here and search it because you're watching my screen. Obviously, I can't do it here. And I could just search it on my phone and find out any information I wanted to know that I have stored in our CRM vault, because we use M files for our own CRM system. We use it for our corporate. Everything we do, we manage out of our vaults, and that includes emails as well. So we haven't talked about a couple of things that are going to differentiate us as well, is sharing and collaboration. So any of these documents in the vault that you have, the right-click menu I mentioned earlier where we talked about adding favorites, but in terms of sharing, if I want to send this internally, so I've been at M-Files now over almost 4 years. Frank can vouch for this. He's been at M-Files for a while. We don't send attachments internally. I've never sent or received an attachment to an email. We do everything by link, and it's already there. It's attached to an email. There's a link to that document.
Okay.
It takes you could send it to 100 people, and it points them right to that one single document. If you want to send go ahead.
Will that link work if you don't have the M-Files application installed?
No.
Like, will it open up the browser-based?
No,
Okay.
not with that click. But in our release that's coming out in April, we now are going to have the ability to link people externally into the document in the vault with a secure link. So you don't have to use, this way you don't have to use OneDrive if you're going to send it externally and you don't want to send them a copy or a PDF. So see, this is a Word file. I can let M-Files do the work and send it as a PDF. Takes like 3 seconds, and it'll be attached to my email. There it is. And I can send that to anybody I want, or I could just send a copy. But if it's a big document, and big documents don't work when you send through email. What if it's a video? What if it's a 20 meg video or something, and you want to send it to an external person? Well, we can do that now. Right click, sharing, and share it via OneDrive. So now you're going to put this, whatever it is, up on OneDrive. You're going to get a secure link, and you can send that link to your customer. In the version.
Is that OneDrive? Is that, just really quick? Is that OneDrive provided by M-Files, or is that like your personal OneDrive?
No, it's Microsoft's OneDrive.
Okay, so it's just like a generic sharing. It's not like using your OneDrive account. You have to sign into it and link it and all that.
Yep, it's a generic, and so then nobody else would be able to find this document out there. They couldn't search for it. They couldn't find it, and we'll get a secure link that you can send to your customer. But even if you bought M-Files today, Robert, the version that you would get is going to be our new version that's coming out the first week or two of April, and it's going to have an additional selection in here to send a link externally. So now you don't even have to mess around with OneDrive. You can send a link to this 20 gig video to some external customer, and they can access it right inside M-Files without having to user interface. It's going to be, I can't wait to see it, to be honest. It's going to be really awesome. And so I haven't seen how that exactly is going to work yet, but I can assure you that it's done, it's completed. It'll come out when we release 2015, it's called 2015.2, and that secure link capability will be there, and it's kind of a big deal, and it's what a lot of our customers have requested it.
Okay.
So yeah, right-click menu allows you to do all kinds of things with documents. You could get the URL for this document, and now I could put that URL on a spreadsheet, anywhere I want to, like this is an expense report. There's my, meal cost or whatever, and I can just hyperlink that document right there. Takes what, 4 clicks? So now anybody that looks at this document that has M-Files internally to your company can simply click on it, and it takes them right, opens up a window, takes them right to that document.
Okay.
Email integration, you want to talk about that for a second?
Only briefly, because we actually have pretty strict retention policies on our email.
Okay.
So I don't think we'd be using it very heavily, because in fact, the question I'd probably have is, can you restrict people from being able to do it at all?
So yeah, I mean, we can make it so that your vault doesn't even show up over here on your folder screen, so that people can, because you can just drag and drop emails into the vault and delete them out of your inbox, because now you can find them much faster, much easier, and you could find that same email, 10 different ways. Oh, it's a customer. Oh, it's a project. Oh, it's this or it's that, and it's now appears to be stored in all those different places, but it's really not. You're just pointing to it based on the metadata. And you can create smart folders here. So if I drop down the caret, here's the vault that we're working in, and I can drop confirmation of orders, you can see, and quotes, and so I could drag things in there, and that automatically is going to pick up metadata and assign it as a type of document, so I don't even have to do it on that properties card. So, but we don't have to spend time talking about that if it's not relevant for you. I think at this point we probably ought to turn it over to Frank and let him show you the same user interface but with the GP, unless you had any other generic questions.
There was one, but I think that it kind of relates to GP as well. It could probably be shown at the same time. The only thing I haven't seen yet that I do want to see is what it looks like when a user has something waiting, like they need to make an approval, or it's asking for an edit. And also, I assume that your software has the automated grabbing of metadata from the scanned image.
Right. Right.
Like, what does it look like when the system says, "Oh, hey, this one had weird handwriting. Can you verify that what I grabbed was correct," or something like that?
Well, first off, if any of these other companies are telling you that they can scan handwriting and recognize it, they're lying.
Oh yeah, that was just an example. I meant like a blurry image or something.
Yeah. Right. So we can set up. We have our own capture product, mFiles Capture, to do batch scanning and high volume scanning and separator sheets and whatever you want to do if you need that type of scanning. We also have an OCR module to do your typical low volume stuff. And so this is the behind the scenes piece with the server admin. And so this is where we're going to set up the scanning of documents into hot folders, and we're going to pick up metadata here. So if I open up this folder, then you can see that we just named it, the location out on the server. We're going to import files, delete the source. We're going to check it about every 10 seconds. And here's where we're going to define what metadata we're going to pick up. Now, in this particular case, we've done some zonal scans. So we've previously knew the layout of this particular invoice vendor, and we know that on this part of the page, this is where the invoice lives, or the invoice number lives. Anything we find in that location, we're going to bring in as invoice number. And then on this location, and we can do this for as many on the page as you want, but we just have to know the layout of the document, right? And so then anything we find there is the invoice amount. And so when that document hits that, and I don't know if you noticed, it's also going to kick off a workflow in there. And in that metadata, it's also going to kick off this reviewing and accepting invoices workflow at the same time. And so anytime documents hit that hot folder, mFiles takes over. And we can do the same thing with email. If you want to have your vendors send in invoices to invoices@EZStorage.com or whatever, we can pick them up, bring them in, and the attachments and metadata, and kick off a workflow. We can do all of that. And so it's all just managed through scanning, and then everything that comes in, like you saw these invoices here, these are assigned to me, and on the metadata card you can see that it's part of a workflow. You can see permissions, and you can see that it's assigned to me, and there's my assignment, and there's my deadline, which I'm woefully behind in doing. And so then you notice that workflow now shows up here on the task area as well, because I clicked on that document. And that also notified me in email. You may have noticed that when we're over here looking at email, so that there's new assignments. And it tells you your assignment, tells you your deadline, and links you to whatever's driving the assignment, in this case, a job application. And so I can open up the job application right from my email.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. In terms of things being assigned, speaking of past due, does your program support escalations? Like, for example, if it hasn't been touched and there's only 1 day left before it's due, re-email the person, letting them know that the due date's coming up, and email their supervisor at the same time, kind of a deal.
So in these workflows here that we were looking at, notice that there was a deadline on there. So here's that workflow. And so if we open up the workflow, notice we have a graphical workflow designer. It's really awesome. It's easy to use, supports anything you can draw. If it supports parallel processing, multiple decision points, if 3 people out of 4 need to approve something, or if one person rejects it. I mean, you've got all these rules you can build in, but in every one of these workflow states, we can do all kinds of things, but I'll just go to the assignment to the user, and you can see we've given them a deadline. So mFile is going to send me an email, and it's going to tell me what my deadline is. In this case, if I don't complete my assignment within that 3-day period, mFiles will notify me a second time. If I still don't complete it, then you can determine what you want to happen. If you want more escalation to happen, or you can build in rules for people that are on vacation or people that are out sick, so that workflow assignments get rerouted. We have all of that intelligence capabilities built into this workflow process.
Okay.
So I assure you that we can do anything that you want to do with regard to managing how you want workflow to be done, including escalation.
Okay, and the last question I have before we move on to Great Plains is, if I have a workflow that says in order for this to get approved, it has to be approved by person A, then person B, then person C.
Right.
Can person B, for example, let's say they're like, I don't want to do this any further until this usually unrelated person takes a look, if he happened to be involved this time. Could he forward that message along to? Could he somehow send that for review to somebody that's normally uninvolved in the approval process?
So
and then it'll come back to him with that review.
So there's several ways you could do that, right? So let's say that this invoice that's assigned to me is in that type of workflow, and it's assigned to me, but I want somebody else to look at it. Well, the easiest thing is just right-click and say to whoever, please take a look at this and let me know, blah, 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 whatever you want to do. So you can just send the link to John or Bill or Fred or whoever and ask them to take a look at it. That's one way to do it. The second way to do it, if you want to have it more trackable, is to simply
That's what I'm looking for.
Create a new assignment. And so now I can create a new assignment that already it's attached to that invoice. And here I'll assign it to whoever one of my users are, so somebody else, right? And then I can put in what I want them to do in this assignment description, and then it's going to show up right here, and it's going to send that person an email, and it's going to say, hey John, take a look at this and let me know what you think, or whatever you want to put into this assignment that you just manually created. And now it's all tracked by mFiles, and it's all, everything's recorded. Is that
okay? Yeah, that definitely works. That'll work for our needs.
Yeah, absolutely, because it ties it right to that document, right to that invoice. Because see, I was selected that invoice when I hit new assignment, and so it automatically captures that, and it links that document right to them when they get this assignment.
Okay.
So it's a manual way to do that. Anything else on your hot list that you want to see?
Nope. As far as generic question, that's all I had. Now I was looking for how you integrate with Great Plains.
Okay, Frank, you still awake?
I'm still there. Hey, David.
Okay, sorry about that. I've just made you the presenter.
That was good.
Hey, before we move on, Robert, do you mind asking what you thought of just the overall demo?
Very good. I mean, it's very user friendly. I really like how it's very reminiscent of Windows Explorer. It makes it very easy to understand and to navigate. As of right now, it's very impressive. I mean, assuming your Great Plains demo works well, and of course, obviously, assuming price works out, I think this is definitely a very, very competitive offer.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure we were all you were happy with it, and see if I got any feedback of anything we needed to work on for the next time. But okay, so I guess I'm good then. If Frank, you want to start?
Sure.
Thanks, Courtney.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess I'll concentrate on the GP piece and how that integrates, and really it's all going to work in the same context of everything Dave has talked about so far. So the processes and the way we manage data through metadata, all of that's going to be the same. And as I go through this too, if you wanted to talk a little bit more about capture, we could do that too, because that ties it pretty well to how we process invoices.
Overall, when it comes to the Great Plains integration, basically what I'm looking for, because obviously most of the steps for Great Plains is going to work almost exactly the same way as any other document. It's going to go through a workflow, get approved by the right people, yada yada. There's a couple integrations of Great Plains that I want to see if your system can handle. First of all is when it's pulling the metadata or when it's asking for metadata from a user, can you pull our GL codes and our companies, yada yada, directly from the Great Plains database and present that as a drop-down option within the mFiles interface?
Yep, definitely, and that plays into one of the things that David was talking about earlier, how we're not just a document repository, we're a content repository or an object repository. So we can manage that kind of data. So in the case of Great Plains, what do you usually work with? You work with vendors and purchase orders.
Typically invoices. It's primarily going to be an accounts payable thing. We get an invoice. It goes to our accounts payable person. They code it. It gets sent off for the approvals based on the codes and the amount. Gets approved, comes back. Final approval from the accounts payable rep after she verifies all the data. That gets sent to the Great Plains, which then creates a batch to get paid. And ideally, after that batch gets paid, the information about the check number and anything else retained of that payment actually being made would get pulled back into mFiles and attached to the invoice for further lookup in the future.
Yep. So yeah, just to show you how that process works with mFiles, and that's pretty much our AP solution in a nutshell. So the way that we manage the data that you currently have in Great Plains in GP is to use the objects that David was talking about. So when we're thinking about things like a vendor or a purchase order, what you would see in mFiles, and you probably have a view for these, so you might have a view for vendors or a view for purchase orders. And if I go into my vendor view and I look at the vendors that I have in mFiles and the data associated to that vendor, all of this is coming in automatically from GP. So it's not something you'll have to set up manually. And this is what we're going to use to sort of do the matching we need to do and give context to the invoices that are getting scanned in.
Okay.
So the way that works is when you create your object type in mFiles, what you're actually doing is saying these are the properties I want, but also this is where I want to get the information. And we have the GP connector that says go out to this section of GP, whether it's vendors or purchase orders, map that, and those fields get mapped to mFiles objects. And essentially what it does, if we look at a vendor at GP, we'll just look at the old travel company. As if changes are being made here, or a purchase order is being added, or a new vendor is being added, as that's going through, so let's say that's going to 1001, their address changed. Pretty simple one. When it hits the next iteration of updates, and the syncing can happen anywhere from every couple minutes to some people do it once a day, some people do it every 15 minutes, and that's kind of up to you. But as soon as that sync happens, and I'll just do it manually here, just to make it go quicker. Those changes are going to be reflected in mFiles.
Okay, and so I do see that. In addition to just the properties of the vendors, I assume that if you put a new vendor into GP, will it automatically pull the whole new object into mFiles?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And
that's where all these came in. Yeah. So it's going to keep those in sync, and that's what's going to give context to the data. As we start, so we have all that information in mFiles. As we start adding invoices, and so Dave alluded to some different ways that we could get invoices into the system. If they're coming in through email, you could bring them in through Outlook. If they're coming in as paper, which most invoices still do, you have some options there. So you can, if you're using, say, a multifunction printer device, so a big scanner copier.
Our primary method of getting things in that are paper are probably going to be scanned to a network folder and then I guess you have some kind of connector that would watch that network folder and push it up to the cloud.
Exactly. That's what David showed earlier. So it's called what we call an external file connector, and then you'd sort of define the fields in there that you want to capture, and essentially what happens is on the M file side you end up with an invoice.
Yep.
And you can see it's what that invoice is going to do. It's going to go into a workflow, and you can see as they come in, they might come in different states depending on. There's going to be some validation that goes on when they come in. So was it able to match to a purchase order? Was it able to match to a vendor? If you wanted to do validation on the amounts, it could do that as well. So just to give you a kind of visualization of sort of the base workflow and what that looks like. And this is certainly customizable, but really what it's going to go through, there's going to be a validation stage. There's going to be an approval stage, and that approval stage could get as detailed as you wanted it to. So it could be conditional approval. So we have a lot of customers who do, if the invoice is over $50,000, go to one person. If it's less than $50,000, you could bypass that person and go around. So you could create these rules, these conditional rules, and sort of approval rules, same as Dave was talking about when he was talking about workflow. So it's going to use that same sort of process. As it goes from stage to stage, that's when it gets assigned to people. So you might have somebody who's responsible for scans coming in that have come in and they're still waiting validation. Maybe something didn't pass the validation, so they need to go in and see if that purchase order exists. Or once it gets to the approval stages, then that's when it gets assigned to the people to approve it. And as it's going through those assignments. The same sort of thing is going to happen when they log into M files. They'll see it in their assigned to me view. This is sort of their work task. They'll be able to click on it and sort of take action on it. The other thing that you could do, though, and this is entirely up to you how you want to process invoices and how you capture the data off of invoices, that workflow could either work at the invoice level. So we could push it through the workflow just as a holistic invoice, or if you wanted more detailed, you could actually do it at the line item level. So what we could do is, what we have are, you can almost think of it as a sub workflow for each line item. So maybe two people are responsible for a line item and another person is responsible, or maybe it depends on what department the line item is associated to. So you could actually have each line item go their own direction in the workflow. And the cool thing about that is they all tie back to the original invoice. So you couldn't say approve if you're doing it at that level of detail, and you don't have to. If you are, you couldn't approve an entire invoice until each line item was taken care of. So in that regard, you could do things like create credit memos. So if there were, you matched it to your shipping receipt and you didn't receive something, you could do that.
Okay.
Once it goes through that approval process and you approve it, what will happen, and we'll just use one that's already been approved here, what M-Files creates is a voucher number, or we get the voucher number, and this is what ties us to GP. So if you went and I found that transaction by that document or voucher number, what M-Files will do once you get an approved invoice is then we could go ahead and create this payables transaction. So we'll take all this data that you've been collecting in M-Files, we'll push that to GP, we'll create this payables transaction for you, and then if you wanted to say, you're working in GP, you're not in M-Files, but you still wanted to review that invoice, that's when we would use the plugins. So I could just go here, click on this, open the invoice. That's going to retrieve it from M-Files. That's going to open the actual invoice document. If you wanted to open it in the M-Files window, we could do that too. The advantage of that is instead of just seeing the actual invoice document, you can see all the information. It'll take you to all the information that we've collected about it. So you could right-click on the history of the invoice. You could see all that kind of information. So that's kind of how we tie the two together. In the next iteration. So the one thing that you asked, we don't have in this iteration, but actually is coming in the next iteration really quickly, is pushing that payment information back into M-Files. So that'll be in the sort of next iteration. But it already has that link, so there's already the link between the document number in the
Okay,
in
now
CDEP files.
in terms of Great Plains companies, our Great Plains is set up that we have basically 45 different databases in Great Plains, each one representing a company.
Yep.
And some of our invoices need to be assigned to more than one company. Can your software handle that, like distributing the transaction between multiple companies?
Yeah, in that instance, we would use, so you would have, say, let's take a look at one of these. So one of the things you could create, I don't know if I have one in here, but are what we call multi-select lists. So any of these, as we're bringing the company in, just like we'd be bringing in the vendor in, what you would do is we'd have a multi-select list here where you could select 2 companies, and it could base the workflow based off of that. Let me see if I can find an example of one of those.
Yeah, in the vault that I was working on, Robert, like all of those customers on all of those documents, that customer is a multi-select, so there'll be a plus sign on top of it, just like he's showing there. Yeah.
Just like here. So this would be company, but you would actually be associating it to more than one. It's what we call a multi-select dropdown. So.
Okay.
So that's just one of the configuration things that we would use, for that particular property, the type of data that it is. You want it to be a multi-select property. It's easy peasy.
Okay, that sounds good.
That's it.
Anything else, Robert, that you want to see that we haven't shown you and amazed you with?
No, in terms of the functionality, it looks good. My next questions revolve around licensing and obviously cost.
Okay.
So how does your licensing work? Like, for example, we probably have 5, maybe 6 people that will be using this heavily. I mean, like diving in, looking at documents, adding the metadata, really working hard on it.
Right.
Then we have probably a significantly more number, probably like 15 to 20, that are purely approvers. Like all they're ever going to do is is hit yes to an approval or no to an approval. Or would those be considered the same license level, or do you have like a cheaper license for pure approvers and then like power user licensing?
Yeah. So Courtney already kind of filled us in with that kind of information. So the way that mFiles licensing works, we have 3 license types. We have a named user, which is full read and write, full access based on permissions, can access it from multi-locations. So if you had sitting at your desk, you could be on your phone, on your desktop, on the browser. You could log into multiple phones from using the same username and password. And then we have what's called a concurrent license, where it's a shared license. But in that case, every time you use one of those devices, you're taking up a concurrent license. And then we have the read-only license, which is the ones that you're going to need for your approvers. So they can participate in workflow, they can read, but they can't save anything to mFiles, they can't change metadata, they can't do anything on the edit or write side. All they can do is read and participate in workflow. So you would have 5 or 6, you said heavy users, so those would be named licenses. And then you would have 15 or 20 read-only licenses for those people, because everything is, every user has their own username and password, for audit trails, tracking, history, all of those kinds of things. So in the cloud, you're talking about a MSRP price per month, and Courtney, Robert has told me I can share this information with your customers. You okay with that?
Yes.
The MSRP. Fine. So the MSRP for a named user license is $39 per month per license. Okay. So you would have basically 6 times 40, so $240 for user licenses, and then the read-only licenses are $9 each. So you'd have, say 20 times 9, so that's another 180. And then we'd have to look at the capture, OCR, what's the best fit for what you need. If it's simply the OCR module, then where we're just doing the kind of the low volume scanning into these hot folders, then that's $150 a month for the OCR module. And then if that's not sufficient and you need the full capture package, then it's not a cloud product. That sits on a workstation at your office, and that's where you process all of those batch scans and other things. And that we have 4 tiers in that product. So and you buy it, you own it. with that software. So it starts at like 1,500, and actually the fourth tier is like 25,000 or something. But it's based on throughput, speed and those kinds of things. But it might be that the OCR module is all you need to do that.
All right. Obviously, I would need. Obviously, we would chances are we'd probably. Actually, no. I guess the first question I have is, Courtney, you said that there are backlog ingestion services you offer, correct?
Excuse me?
You said that there are like back file ingestion services that you offer, correct? Where you can take care of doing our large initial scan and then anything going.
Yeah. So we would be able to. That isn't. That's just a kind of a centric thing. That's not really an M file thing. So that would be something separate. Where we would be able to take those and then scan them into the M files for you.
Okay, so from there then the question is, I would need a more detailed information on what's the difference between the OCR module and the full-on software. I would need to get a better understanding of what the differences are between them, like what is available in the full software that isn't available in the OCR package.
Right. And it's really pretty simple. The OCR module that we have is built into the server side of the Vault, and we can watch those folders, pick up documents, do zonal scans where we're picking up metadata from known locations on the page, and then convert all of those into fully text searchable PDFs. But it's not going to be a software that you can do high volume, high batch scanning, and that's what our capture module is for. And so you have some choices there.
What would you define as the kind of recommended limit? Like if you scan more than X per month, we'd recommend the software over the OCR, for example.
Gosh, that's a good question. Frank, what do you think to answer that?
I guess it might depend more on the use case. So I mean, what are your volumes, scan volumes?
We probably get, and again, my accounting team would know this better than I would, but probably roughly 500 to 1,000 invoices a month.
Yeah, and I think the OCR module would handle that, Frank, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, is it, how many different vendors do you have?
That I don't know a definitive answer on. I mean, we have a good number, but it's not like an astronomical number. I know that much.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, the volume of invoices certainly can easily be handled by the OCR module. That's not a problem.
Yeah, so the one question I do have, though, is I remember that you said one of the things that the OCR didn't have, the software did, was like separator pages. So like the things I'm thinking about are like when we have 45 separate locations, which can result in 45 separate BG&E bills. With just the OCR, would that mean we would scan them as 45 different files, or is there a way we could do something where we could put the whole stack in the scanner using separator pages of some kind and get the OCR to take care of it in one file?
Well, those BG&E invoices are all the same layout, I'm sure, right? Just different locations?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the OCR module, you could put all 45 of those into the scanner with the OCR module, and we could do a zonal scan because we know the layout of those up front, and we can pick up the location, the dollar amount, the date, the invoice number, whatever you want off of those 45 invoices for 45 different locations.
Would that have the ability for me to, which it may not matter, this is something I'll talk to the accounting team about, would it create 45 separate files? Like, would it separate them automatically, or would it just pull the metadata from?
No, it'd be 45 different documents with the associated metadata, because on the first page it's Baltimore, and the second page it's someplace else, the third page it's whatever else. So
so when it sees that location name change, it'll create a new document based on that.
Well, it's going to be a new document every time because it's 45 pages. So each one of those pages are going to be scanned into that hot folder, and we're going to pick all 45 of them up and turn them all into individual fully text searchable PDFs with the appropriate metadata. So then when you went into a view by location, you'll see the BG&E bill for that location, for example.
Okay, so thinking about our BG&E bills a bit closer, let's say it's 45 locations spread out across 150 pages. Like, some of them are 3 pages, some of them are 4 pages, And the way that the software could potentially know that a new document should have started is the account number would have changed on the top right or something. Is it smart enough to take a single PDF with like 150 pages and split it into 45 different ones when it sees that separation happen?
Well, it's not going to be a single PDF if you're scanning. So,
well, I mean, when it's in our network folders, at least it would be. We have a very large, heavy-duty, multifunction copier.
Right.
We could put 150 pages onto the ultimate document feeder, feed it through the scanner, and it would create a PDF and drop it as a single PDF file into the network folder.
Right, but we would want you to not do that. We would want you to just put TIFF images out there, and we'll convert them to PDFs. So your scanner every scanner can create TIFF files.
Okay.
And then you don't have to do all the conversion, and then we'll do the conversion. But then on this, your question about the multiple pages, Frank, I don't know, that might push them towards the capture module over the OCR though, right?
Yeah, so if the document separation capabilities are definitely more advanced in the capture module, it also gives you, the other thing the capture module gives you is an interface. So if for some reason it failed separation in a particular spot, you could just sort of drag around those TIFF images before they get moved into M files and converted. So it gives you a little more flexibility in that capture process. And it could use a few different methods for separating a document into, or separating a big stack of pages into separate documents. It could use what you were speaking of earlier, which we call thumbprint detection, which is, look for an invoice number in this section. If the invoice number changes, create a new document. It could use barcodes. It could use separator sheets, anything like that. So there is a lot more flexibility with M files capture than there would be with the OCR module. So one of the things we'd probably have to do is just sort of, maybe take a look at a stack of documents and have somebody on our team maybe review it and see what would be the best option.
Okay. And let's see, what else? What's your MSRP on your concurrent user license, just so I'm aware of that in case we decide that we might need a little bit more? Because my gut feeling is there may be a few users where they might have the authority to like edit the metadata, like, oh no, that GL code's wrong, let me just switch it real quick.
Sure.
They might want that ability. So what's your concurrent license?
Sure, that's $99 per month.
Okay. So, and is there limited storage? Like, is there a charge for the amount of storage we're using, or is that just like basic, almost unlimited, based on a certain amount per user? How does that work?
So, that was the next thing I was going to say. So, if you bought 6 named user licenses, and let's say you bought 2 concurrent licenses, so it's now 8. So your vault would be started out at 16 gigabytes, 2 gigabytes per license. It doesn't count the read-onlys. It's just the named and concurrents. But additional storage is really cheap. I mean, you could get an additional 50 gigabytes for only $15 a month. You could get a terabyte for $200 a month. So storage is pretty cheap to add it.
Okay, yeah, it's not a problem at all. Okay. Okay, in that case, what I'd like to do from here is, I do think this product will fit us very well. So if possible, I'd like you to do is I'd like you to, I noticed that this session is being recorded through GoToMeeting. Yeah,
I recorded it, so the GP piece, I could have that GP piece.
Would it be possible for you to send me the full recording of that so that I can forward it along to my team and kind of walk them through what I found, and then we can move from there? Because chances are my accounting team representatives are going to want to talk to you and get a little deeper into the Great Plains piece. But sure, as of what I've seen, it should definitely work out.
Yeah, I'll save the recording, put it out on OneDrive, send you a link to it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No worries. Glad to do it.
All right, great. Robert, I'll probably just give you a call once we get off here just to kind of recap everything. But do you have any other questions about anything?
I think
nope, I'm good on my end.
Good. Well, thanks so much, Courtney and Robert. Thanks for giving us so much time. And I want to thank Frank tremendously for lending his GP expertise into this. I couldn't have done it without him. So we will
thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. And Courtney will follow up, and she'll direct us, how to proceed.
Thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate it,
great.
guys.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.